can all agree it's been a long campaign. But tomorrow, you get to pick our next president. So here are a few things that I hope you'll think about. First, it's not just my name and my opponent's name on the ballot. It's the kind of country we want for our children and grandchildren. Is America dark and divisive, or hopeful and inclusive?
All right, now George Clooney, he's criticizing Hillary Clinton because of her failed run for the White House. In an interview with the Daily Beast, he says this, I'm quoting for the audience here. It was frustrating because I never saw her elevate her game. I never saw it. She's not as good at communicating things. When she got up and gave a speech, it didn't soar.
George Clooney is openly criticizing Hillary Clinton over her failed run for the White House, telling the Daily Beast that he found it frustrating because he never saw her elevate her game or communicate effectively, saying her speeches simply didn't soar. Clooney calling out Clinton feels like the Hollywood plot twist nobody expected on their 2025 bingo card. Mr. Smooth-talking coffee commercial taking aim at a political powerhouse, turning the red carpet into a debate stage. This isn't about Oscars or elections. It's about egos colliding like two comets in designer suits, leaving us to wonder what could push Clooney to drop the charm and go full roast mode. And honestly, this showdown might just outshine Hollywood drama itself.
What do you make of George Clooney's comment?
Well, where's he been for the last 20 or 30 years? What, all of a sudden she's going to become Winston Churchill just because she got the nomination? Hillary is Hillary. What George Clooney is suffering from buyer's remorse. They backed the wrong horse. 13% of the people who voted for Hillary regret their vote. Only 9% of the people who voted for Trump regret their vote.
Hillary Clinton has this uncanny habit of reappearing like a reboot nobody asked for, dusting herself off every few months and attempting to relaunch her career as if America suddenly developed amnesia and forgot she's the political equivalent of hitting force quit on a frozen computer. It's almost impressive in a tragic sitcom sort of way. One moment she's sipping Chardonnay in the woods of Chappaqua. The next she's on stage acting as if the 2016 election was just a bad dream triggered by expired kale. And just when you think the script has finally ended, George Clooney of all people grabs the director's chair and declares, "Cut. Enough with the Hillary reruns."
At how much is being raised, and I think the cost of the Friday night dinner, $353,000 a couple to be a co-chair. Do you look at it yourself and think that's an obscene amount of money?
Yes. I think it's an obscene.
Hillary Clinton doesn't take hints. She treated the presidency like an Amazon delivery clicked by now, and when the package didn't show up in November, she blamed the Postal Service, the neighbors, the dog, the Russians, the FBI, and probably even a bad horoscope. What she never seemed to grasp is that the American people weren't out of stock. They just didn't want it.
Well, I think this is a very clear example of that. It is a direct government action to try to intimidate employers, organizations, corporations, much of which we've already seen, to remove an opponent, even though it's a comic.
The problem is, Hillary keeps trying to remix her political career, like an EDM track nobody asked to dance to, with every speech, interview, and press op sounding like the same tired remastered album. If only the voters understood me better. But the truth is, they did understand loud and clear. They just didn't want to spend 4 years with someone whose "I'm with her" slogan felt less like a campaign rallying cry and more like a hostage situation.
Absolutely right. It's ridiculous that we should have this kind of money in politics. I agree completely.
You know, it's interesting. We caught, our camera caught you having a conversation with the protesters last night. What did you say to them?
Well, that was the funniest thing. I went over to try to talk to him, and he said I was some corporate shill, which, if you know me, that's one of the funny.
Clooney pointing at Hillary is rich, because if there's one thing Hollywood loves, it's a comeback, but even he knows this isn't a comeback. This is the Titanic trying to float again because someone duct taped a pool noodle to the hull. Hillary has had more relaunches than an iPhone. First Lady Hillary, Senator Hillary, Secretary Hillary, Candidate Hillary, and the "I'm technically not running, but by my book" Hillary. At this stage, she's like that one reality show contestant who refuses to leave the villa even after being dumped on national.
You know, you sucked as Batman, and I was like, well, you kind of got me on that one. And then I walked away, and that was
That's awesome.
That was basically it. But you know, I think what's important, and what I think the Clinton campaign has not been very good at explaining is this, and this is the truth. The overwhelming amount of money that we're raising, and it is a lot, but the overwhelming amount of the money that we're raising is not going to Hillary to run for president. it's going to the down ticket. It's going to the...
Let's be real, Hillary's brand has always been a little dusty. People talk about her like she's the Microsoft PowerPoint of politics. Functional. Reliable in a pinch. But nobody's excited to open it. She campaigned in 2016 like she was updating people's Wi-Fi passwords. Useful, but soulless. And instead of asking why that approach flopped, she spent years acting like voters should feel guilty for not enjoying beige wallpaper. Every reemergence feels like she's auditioning for a role she was already fired from. Remember when she thought reading excerpts of her emails on stage would come across as quirky? It felt more like an HR department finalizing paperwork. And when voters rejected her, she treated the entire country like an intern who failed to appreciate her PowerPoint transitions. She ran against Donald Trump, a guy who tweets at 3 a.m. and he still managed to make people decide that chaos was preferable to monotony. That's a talent. Not a good one, but a talent.
That's important. And the reason it's important to me is because we need, I'm a Democrat, so if you're Republican, you're going to disagree, but we need to take the Senate back because we need to confirm a Supreme Court justice, because that fifth vote on the Supreme Court can overturn Citizens United and get this obscene, ridiculous amount of money out, so I never have to do a fundraiser again. And
the irony of Clooney calling Hillary out is that she still seems to think she's the main character of American politics, acting like she's just one well-timed monologue away from sparking a slow clap moment. But the truth is, the curtain fell years ago. The audience isn't standing. They already left the theater and are in the parking lot debating pizza versus tacos. Hillary can't let go of the spotlight, constantly popping into 2024 conversations like an ant crashing a wedding toast with, well, when it was my turn. Clooney stepping in feels like the DJ, finally yanking the mic at karaoke night after too many off-key renditions of Asterisk, I Will Survive. Asterisk, and of course, she's the queen of excuses. If procrastination had a Hall of Fame, Hillary would be on the cover. Lost the election. Blame Russia, sexism, James Comey, the Electoral College. The weather, if it snowed in Michigan, somehow that was Trump's fault. That wasn't cultural connection. It was a live-action SNL skit. Hillary has always been allergic to natural charisma, which is why her campaign rallies felt less like political events and more like mandatory workplace seminars. Nobody walked out inspired. They walked out wondering if they just lost 2 hours of...
She is so evil. She is so unbelievably evil. She is my favorite supervillain. She's like Thanos in the Avengers. Like, this is why I love Hillary Clinton so much, because she is just so fundamentally evil. And what you have to understand about a supervillain that is as fundamentally evil as Hillary Clinton is, that there is not a word that comes out of her mouth that does not have a political...
What makes it worse is that Hillary surrounds herself with people who keep insisting she's a genius. So she doubles down every time. Each new book is less a memoir and more a 500-page essay titled, "It Wasn't My Fault." Her entire bibliography reads like a therapy session on paper, except instead of paying a therapist, she expects the public to buy the hardcover. Clooney calling her out feels like Hollywood finally saying, "Enough, lady, you're making even our sequels look original." And then there are the emails. Every politician has a scandal. But Hillary's was so dull, it actually made people more suspicious. She deleted thousands of emails and acted shocked that anyone cared. That's like robbing a bank, leaving your wallet on the counter, and saying, "What? It's just receipts." She somehow managed to turn digital housekeeping into her own version of Watergate.
I'm a big fan of Hillary's, are you?
No, I don't like
Why don't you like Hillary?
I don't like her very much. Well, because I think she's the most corrupt person that we've ever had in the White House. I mean, there's so many terrible things that she's done that we forget. But there was one that, I don't know why this was swept under the rug, but, you know, she went into the IRS and looked at political...
Your mandatory homework. That's not empowerment. That's condescension. She delivers takes nobody asked for, as though the entire country is waiting breathlessly for her analysis, when in reality, most people barely have time to focus on those actually running, let alone a retired candidate still workshopping her loss like it's a Broadway show in endless previews. At this point, Hillary is the politician who keeps knocking on the same locked door, convinced that if she just jiggles the handle the right way, it'll open. But the house is empty, the lights are off, and the voters moved 3 zip codes away. She's still rehearsing a victory speech for an audience that went home years ago.
War on truth, facts, and reason. You can't have a democracy if you don't have people reporting on what leaders are doing. And so we need to defend journalists, not only countries like Russia, and not only against non-state actors in Latin America, but we have to be vigilant.
Every time she talks, you kind of get why Bill did what he did. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know.
Clinton's entire career proves that you can be competent, intelligent, and experienced and still manage to be the least inspiring person in the room. She has a human resume. Impressive on paper. Exhausting in practice, and no matter how many cameos she forces herself into, the ending is always the same. She lost, and nobody's buying tickets for the sequel. So when Clooney says enough, it isn't Hollywood meddling, it's Hollywood staging an intervention. Someone had to say it. Hillary is the only person who can tumble down the political stairs, blame the architecture, and still show up at the next event in high heels. The rest of us are stuck watching the reruns, wondering how many more seasons she thinks this show has left. She's mastered the art of being the wrong person at the right time every time history opened a door. She tripped over the welcome mat. By the time she became senator, her speeches sounded less like fresh ideas and more like a recycling bin of buzzwords. She addressed voters the way a motivational speaker addresses employees at a corporate retreat. Lots of platitudes, plenty of smiles, and zero connection. But Americans weren't looking for a PowerPoint on incremental change. They wanted someone who at least looked like they'd been inside a grocery store in the last decade. Hillary campaigned like she was too busy reading quarterly reports to realize that regular people don't want a lecture. They just want to feel like they're not invisible.
Evil. Like, there's nothing like her.
Why would she even tweet that? Like, don't you have
I think she just sits around in her evil lair. Whenever she runs out of Eye of Newt and Small Children to Boil, she then goes to X and just says whatever the most evilest thing. I think if the devil himself showed up, like, you'll never hear her being possessed by a demon.
And yet Hillary insists the problem was everyone else. If you handed her a pie chart of 2016 blame, it would look like a giant wheel of fortune. Russia, fake news, Facebook ads, Bernie Bros, James Comey, climate change, El Nino, every excuse except the one slice labeled me. She genuinely treats losing like it was a group project where everyone else forgot to do their part. That's why Clooney's nudge matters. If there's one thing Hollywood hates, it's a flop that refuses to leave theaters. Even Batman and Robin packed it up after humiliating itself. But Hillary keeps running her 2016 disaster like it's a midnight showing of The Room. And Clooney knows a flop when he sees one. He wore rubber nipples and a cape. For crying out loud. At least he admits it's better to laugh at your failure and move on. Hillary, on the other hand, is like the political equivalent of someone who shows up at your wedding just to hand out business cards. The optics alone made people queasy. Sure, everyone in politics plays the donation game, but Hillary made it so shamelessly obvious it felt less like fundraising and more like a Costco.
And that drove me up. They're vicious people. These are vicious people. I could have done that to Hillary Clinton. What she did was so bad. She got a subpoena from the United States Congress and she destroyed everything. You go to jail for that.
Your mandatory homework. That's not empowerment. That's condescension. She delivers takes nobody asked for as though the entire country is waiting breathlessly for her analysis. When in reality, most people barely have time to focus on those actually running, let alone a retired candidate still workshopping her loss like it's a Broadway show in endless previews. At this point, Hillary is the politician who keeps knocking on the same locked door, convinced that if she just jiggles the handle the right way, it'll open. But the house is empty, the lights are off, and the voters moved 3 zip codes away. She's still rehearsing a victory speech for an audience